Today we have Ted Limas from the Ted Limas Law Firm on today. Say hello, Ted.
Hi, everyone.
And today we're going to be talking about the epidemic of counterfeit products and rogue listings on Amazon. And to kind of lead us through this, I believe Paul is going to start us off. Is that correct?
That's right, Tim. So one of the things that's really frustrating for a lot of folks that are manufacturers or selling through Amazon is the fact that there are so many folks that are counterfeiting their products and putting them onto Amazon on the same listing, same product listing as maybe they're selling under, or they're very frustrated with the idea that people are taking their actual product that they might be getting through other distribution channels, putting them up on Amazon as separate listings, either in multi-packs or they're bundling them with some other item, whether it's from that manufacturer or something else that they have out there. So we're really interested in hearing from Ted what can be done about these different situations, and that's what we're hoping to get some insight on today. And Ted Limas is a fantastic attorney that specializes in the area of Amazon, and he's been doing so for 8 years. So before we get started on that topic, Ted, I want you to just tell us a little bit about your background, which I know you've done before in our prior webinars, your background in working with Amazon before we get into the topic discussion, if that's okay with you.
Well, thanks, Paul. It's great to be back with Awesome Dynamic, and these are very important topics to discuss. As you mentioned, I've been working with the Amazon community for approximately 7 to 8 years. Prior to that, I was a civil litigation attorney, actually still am a civil litigation attorney in Southern California. I've been licensed to practice in California for 26 years. And so that gives me I think an advantage when it comes to enforcing intellectual property rights on Amazon and other e-commerce platforms and the internet generally.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for that intro. And before we dive into the topic too, I just want to briefly show folks where they can get a hold of you. So Tim, if you wouldn't mind bringing up Ted's website on the screen here, the best way to get a hold of Ted, if you wouldn't mind telling us your website and contact details.
Yeah, it's tedlawfirm.com. Best way to get a hold of me for most folks is to just email me, ted@tedlawfirm.com, or give me a call, 626-993-7000.
Great. Okay, so Ted, we talked a little bit just briefly before the webinar here, like Tim said, the epidemic of counterfeits and other people bundling product with the real product and making new listings on Amazon. And I know that you have a number of methods that you can use either in the Amazon framework or out. So before we get into a lot of those details, I know that you have a disclaimer that you'd like to say. So if you wouldn't mind saying that, we'll go ahead and put the text up on the screen in the final video, unless Tim has that prepared, and then we'll dive right in.
Yeah, you know, I'm an attorney, and I value my license to practice law, and so any commentary that I give today should not be viewed as legal advice, and it does not create an attorney-client relationship. If you have a specific matter that you want to discuss, I'm happy to discuss that with you, or you should seek the advice of your own counsel.
Great. And with that being said, Ted, let's talk about the counterfeits first. So tell us a little bit about your experience with counterfeit products and your experience with them and what could be done.
Well, this is primarily what I do is handle counterfeits or knockoff products, or what Amazon likes to refer to as inauthentic products. And it is a constant problem on Amazon. We have a lot of rogue sellers that are usually overseas, largely from China, although certainly not exclusively from China, who will jump on your listing and sell products that do not exactly match the listing. When we use the term counterfeit, then what we're talking about is a product that in every respect attempts to mimic the authentic product. So the packaging will be the same, the size, shape, color of the product will be the same. In many respects, they will have used your photographs or your product description from your detail page exactly down to the T to create what is a counterfeit. So think of, when we think of counterfeiting money or $100 bills, that's what they're trying to do, is to replicate exactly your product. Fortunately, Amazon is pretty good, or at least has gotten better, in my view, at dealing with true counterfeiting situations. And typically how I handle those is to report them directly to Amazon, because these are people who have invested time and money to actually create an unlawful reproduction of your product. There are other kinds of counterfeiting issues, as I say, the inauthentic product. So, for instance, a product that is not a true counterfeit, but it's similar to the product that you're selling on Amazon. It may be different in certain respects. The materials might be different. It might be a different size or shape or color. It might have a different label on it or a different brand name. Those aren't true counterfeits, but they're still inauthentic products that do not match the Amazon listing. And so that's against Amazon's rules. It may or may not be a trademark or copyright infringement, but it is against Amazon's rules. With those, you're better off contacting the seller first, if you're able to do so. Use Amazon messaging or however you're able to contact them, and advise them that they're in violation of Amazon's rules because their product does not exactly match the listing. Now, sometimes you're not able to tell, what kind of problem you have on your hands. Whether this is a serious rogue seller that's really trying to edge you out of your listing, not just take the buy box, but literally take over your listing. Or if it's somebody who just sort of accidentally, they saw your ASIN, they've got a product that's pretty much similar, and due to their own inexperience, they decide to start selling from your listing. I find that there are a lot of folks out there that genuinely are not, they don't mean to do you harm. They've just they've got a product. They want to sell it. They think that they're on the right listing. They've made a mistake, and if you contact them, they'll get off of your listing. So I typically, take that approach where I firmly but politely ask them to withdraw from the listing. If they don't respond, or if they respond with a race to the bottom, trying to reduce their price to take the buy box, then I assume that this is a more sophisticated operator who knows what they're doing, and they're likely selling counterfeit product for as fast as they can. Feel free to interrupt me. I'm just kind of going on here and talking about the issues that I see and how I generally approach them.
No, this is great, Ted. So please continue.
Well, your listeners should be aware that there is an entire cottage industry in China where people are they're selling what are essentially disposable seller accounts. So these folks, they get credit cards, they open bank accounts that look authentic to Amazon, and they open up seller accounts, and then they sell these seller accounts, so that these bad operators will have multiple accounts that they're operating at any one time. And if Amazon shuts one down, they're ready to go with another account. In fact, sometimes we see sellers, you can tell the ones who have multiple accounts, because they'll have the same inventory under different seller names and seller ID numbers on Amazon. And that's when you know that you've got a sophisticated operator who can buy and sell these, what I call disposable seller accounts. And unfortunately, that gives them the ability to stay one step ahead of Amazon's enforcement, which, as you know, is pretty slow to act on complaints of infringement and counterfeiting to begin with. But it really makes it difficult to shut down the very sophisticated operators.
So that's very interesting. I didn't know about these disposable seller accounts. It's almost like the what is it, the snake that has the regenerating head? I forgot what the term is, but one gets cut off and another one pops right back up, and it's kind of like that kind of situation. The identification of counterfeiters, one thing that I've always talked to folks about is if they're selling a product for lesser amount than they could possibly make money for, that's one way we kind of identify that there's a potential counterfeit there without having to pull the inventory. We also look at when we're working with our clients, we recommend that they do stickered inventory if they're going through Seller Central, so this way they know that their customers are absolutely getting the correct items or the items that they had sent in to Amazon, instead of the commingled situation where it's just a bucket of items and the counterfeiter could be sending in items, they're all getting mixed in with your items and you have no idea what's going on there, and Amazon isn't likely to go down there and help you check to see what's there. So that's where the whole idea of doing the test buys comes in, or what we've done with a lot of our clients that have those issues. We try and get the customer to return the item so we can physically inspect the item, which, Ted, I know you have a whole bunch of boxes in your office all the time doing the different test buys to see what those boxes actually contain. And it's interesting to see that there are just little differences between what the authentic product has and what the counterfeit product has. And it's those little differences that help you make that case. But I was wondering, Ted, if you could just explain a little bit about how that test buy and identification process works. So this way, and what the next steps are once you do make that identification.
Sure. Amazon has a dedicated portal through which you can make infringement complaints that relate to copyright infringement or trademark infringement. And so that portal, though, it's fairly easy to use, but with Amazon, they use these kind of drop-down menus, and they kind of pigeonhole you into certain types of complaints. And if you don't know what type of complaint you're dealing with, it's easy for Amazon to simply refuse your request, because if you don't really know the difference between a copyright or a trademark or a situation where it may be both or it may be something completely different, it can be a little bit difficult to use Amazon's portal. But a good way to think of this is that when you are making an intellectual property complaint to Amazon, Amazon sort of sits like a judge and needs to adjudicate whether your complaint has validity or not. And that's important because Amazon does not want to shut down legitimate sellers of product. And after all, this is a platform where it's an open catalog, and people who do have the genuine version of your product can sell it on your listing. That's legal, it's appropriate, and so Amazon needs to make sure that people aren't abusing the reporting process to effectively, destroy competitors. So they do need, and in most cases require, that you submit some evidence that there has been either a violation of Amazon's rules or a violation of the law, that is trademark, patent, or copyright infringement, which is why they typically require that you conduct a test buy, get the product, the best way to do it is to submit photos, ideally side-by-side photos of the genuine product and the product that you received, and point out, if it's not obvious, point out the differences to Amazon to show them that this is either a counterfeit or an inauthentic product. And sometimes when it's a true counterfeit, it's actually difficult to point out the differences. You need to, draw on the photo and show them, see, this is a different fabric, or this is a different shape, or a different color, or this is an inferior product in these precise ways. So again, Amazon is sitting sort of as a judge and going to adjudicate whether your claim has merit or not. If they find that it has merit, then they do typically take action. It does sometimes take longer than we would like. Waiting several days or even a week or two is not uncommon. But as I say, I think Amazon is beginning to take these kinds of claims more seriously. They're assigning more people to these tasks, and I'm seeing better results on a more consistent basis now than even 5 or 6 months ago. So that's the good news.
Now, Ted, if you see, let's say that you are able to show, let's say, a difference between the different products and it is a commingled product, are you seeing Amazon going through and actually scrutinizing the inventory after you've made that identification and actually disposing of the counterfeit products on behalf of that other counterfeit seller? And before you answer that question, this does apply to folks that are doing Vendor Central as well, because those Vendor Central products that you're sending in are just commingled. You don't have you don't even have the option of doing stickered inventory to guarantee your customers are getting your products. But Ted, do they actually dispose of that product?
I wish I knew. As with most things, Amazon, it's kind of done behind a screen. Once a legitimate claim is submitted and they do act on it, we get an email confirming that they have pulled the listing, and typically, the rogue seller, at the very least, gets some kind of notice, or if not, a suspension. What happens to the inventory that's been commingled? We know it's there in many instances. What happens to it? I don't know. Amazon does not make us privy to that information. Obviously, as part of my requests to Amazon, I asked them to segregate out the inauthentic merchandise and to make sure that it's not being commingled. But whether it actually happens or not, Paul, we don't know. We're just not privy to that information.
Gotcha. Now with the other aspect of counterfeit products is, obviously, you mentioned, well, what happens to the person that's actually been doing it, and you said account suspensions can happen. This kind of harkens back to what you were just mentioning in regard to these extra seller accounts that are ready to go. Have you seen that if you're the squeaky wheel to Amazon and you continue to pursue situations where they keep popping up on your clients' listings, that eventually you're too much trouble for them to deal with and then they just go away?
Yeah, that is true. And that's true for most sellers, but the really sophisticated sellers, the ones who are making use of these, as we call them, disposable seller accounts, they're really difficult to get rid of. It's a game of whack-a-mole with them. They go from one seller name to another, to another, to another. And I'm doing that. I'm playing this game for months now with a number of clients. And just every day we just knock down the new sellers. We make reports. We notify the sellers. We know it's the same people over and over and over again, and they seem to be able to go through, a dozen or more seller accounts every month. And apparently they're willing to pay the cost, because it's not free to have these disposable seller accounts, but they're willing to pay that cost in order to play this game. They're over in China, so they're beyond the jurisdiction of our courts. I can't go into federal court and get an injunction against them that's going to stick. And let's face it, I'm not going to ever be able to find them anyway, because they keep using fraudulent addresses and things. And again, these addresses are probably over in Guangzhou, China, or wherever they're from. So the really sophisticated sellers, you just have to keep on them every day, assign somebody to the task of beating them up every single day. But that's fairly rare, thank goodness. For the most part, if we make a report, that seller does get suspended, or their selling privileges get terminated, even better yet, and they go away. It's always delightful when I get to my office in the morning and boot up my computer, and I have emails from sellers that we've reported and that they have been suspended, and they're writing me and begging me and telling me, oh my goodness, we were supporting 3 families off of our Amazon account. Please withdraw your complaints to Amazon. It's who knows whether those things are true or not. I doubt that they are, but when they are stealing my client's intellectual property, they get no sympathy from me.
Well, so I'm glad you addressed that, Ted. I was going to ask, how often does this extreme version of counterfeiting and these multiple seller accounts actually come up? And you addressed it. It's not something that happens often. But it seems like there are some situations with counterfeit products where it's a one-off situation. You are able to get them suspended, and then they're begging you to withdraw your complaints, and you've in essence won the battle. And yeah, this is really serious, because it directly ties to your clients and our clients' ability to make money, and you can see a drastic swing in the revenues, in their sales and their accounts, based on pursuing these counterfeit sellers and having them removed versus just letting it go on. Because as we both know, getting the buy box is key. And if your client is the only one that sells the item, they should have 100% buy box, because no one else should be able to compete on that listing or sell that product. So when someone is able to edge their way in there and start taking away sales, they're drastically impacting their ability to make money legitimately through Amazon's framework. So Ted, if you wouldn't mind quickly commenting on what percentage of people fall into that extreme category and other categories when it comes to the different counterfeit situations, I'd appreciate that.
The extreme situation, fortunately, I don't see that much. Maybe 5% of my clients suffer from those kinds of issues. And Paul, something else that we ought to talk about is that Amazon has recently, as in last month, begun offering gating, or pre-authorization is what they call it, to certain branded listings. They used to offer gating to the big brands, the Nikes and the Pillsburys and the really big name brands. But they began just unilaterally giving gating, or that is pre-authorization protection, to certain listings that were not big brands and that had severe counterfeiting problems. But unfortunately, Amazon, when they rolled it out, they didn't notify anybody what they were doing. It just happened overnight. I started getting phone calls from some of my clients who were overjoyed to see that their listings had been gated. And I've been getting a lot of phone calls since from clients or prospective clients who are desperate to get that kind of gating. And unfortunately, Amazon has not set up any kind of system or portal through which we can apply for gating. But I have been sending in gating requests to Amazon Legal. and providing them with all the information that they need. And I'm getting mixed success with those requests. But typically, Amazon will only gate for, let's say that a client has 100 listings on Amazon. Amazon will typically not gate the entire brand, that is, all 100 listings, but will gate the 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 that are most frequently hijacked. So that's one thing that you need to demonstrate to Amazon, is that these are listings that are the targets of hijacking and counterfeiting. And the other thing that you need to have is that all of these listings, any listings that you want to have gated, need to be enrolled in brand registry. So for those of you listeners out there who are on Amazon, definitely get brand registered. It's an easy process, at least right now. At least it doesn't cost any money, and it just affords you a certain extra measure of protection against counterfeiting, or at least Amazon will pay greater attention to your reports because it shows that you're serious about branding your product and protecting that brand.
Ted, I'm glad you mentioned the brand registry. That's something we recommend to all of our clients that get into Seller Central. Of course, it's always easier with the trademark and having proof that you own your brand through websites and other things online. And it's very interesting to learn that they'll provide gated on a product by product basis. Like you said, the first thing that popped up into my mind is I wonder if they would do it across the entire brand. And like you said, I think Blake and I have talked about how they do that for Disney, they do it for Lego, but for smaller brands, they're, like you said, desperate to get some sort of those some of those protections. So as that continues, please keep us up to date on your success. Hopefully it'll be something where it's just a gating registry program, and you just apply, put it in, and it just happens. That would be wonderful, wouldn't it?
It would, and bear in mind, this new policy is still evolving. Lots of things could happen with Amazon. They could start charging for gating. They could start charging for brand registry. I'm just throwing these things out there, but Amazon, when they see a demand for something, sometimes they start charging for it. So it's, the rules can change. They could withdraw this program, they could roll it back, or I hope they roll it forward, because it's been a godsend for some of my clients.
Very good. Phil gave me a few different questions that he sent over to me through chat message. He said, why do counterfeiters go through all the trouble and risk of getting caught doing something unlawful?
Well, they've got nothing to lose and everything to gain, especially if they're overseas and beyond the jurisdiction of our courts. They know that it's highly unlikely that anyone is going to actually go through the cost and trouble of suing them and then trying to enforce that judgment in a foreign country. And so, let's say that they can jump on your listing and sell, a couple thousand units or tens of thousands of units within a matter of days or weeks or months or however long they're able to sell it. That's money in their pocket. And remember, it's U.S. dollars, which is a very valuable currency compared to many other countries where these counterfeiters live. So yeah, it's kind of a smash and grab technique, but they've got very little to lose by doing it.
Yeah, and a lot of them have produced a tremendous amount of inventory, and it's worth it to them to continue to try until they are able to expend the inventory that they produced.
Yes.
Now, the other thing that Phil wrote here is it only the ones who are overseas or outside of our legal system that try and do this counterfeiting, or have you noticed anything that's been happening inside the United States?
Yeah, certainly. This happens quite a lot inside the United States. Some of these counterfeiters, they find that they need, in order to really have a sophisticated operation, they need to have a presence here. You'll find that often a lot of these folks are here in Southern California because the ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach are by far the largest ports in the nation for imports from China. We have a very large Chinese and foreign population here in Southern California. So they can set up warehouses and create distribution points here in Southern California. And I love it when we're able to actually pinpoint one of these folks that has a presence here in the United States, or ideally here in Southern California where I am, because then I can send a paper or cease and desist letter, and I have a process server go over there and knock on their door and deliver it to them by hand. And then they know that we know where they are and that we mean business. You know, I could go and get an injunction from one of our courts, and we could shut down operations. We can seize their inventory. We can seize assets that are in the United States and conduct discovery. We can make life really difficult for them if they are here in the United States or they have some base of operations here in the United States.
Great, thank you, Ted. We have a whole other segment that we want to get into in regard to selling legitimate product, but in a bundled way on Amazon, and what can manufacturers do about that, which we're going to get into in just a moment. But before we do that, want to definitely do another commercial. We're going to do Awesome Dynamic first this time, then we're going to have Ted do his law firm second. So Terry, you're up for the promo of Awesome Dynamic.
Well, thank you very much, Paul. So as you folks who are watching have realized, we like to talk quite a bit about Amazon. We are Amazon seller consultants and have some clients of ours who are having extreme sales increases under our watch. We're very happy about that, and you could be one of those as well. We do have several different models we can talk to you about. You can reach us at 800-238-1811 or get me specifically at terry@awesomedynamic.com. Several different ways we can help people with the getting in or expanding their sales in the world of Amazon. Also, we do responsive web design. So we can get that website, a new website for you. You can make sure that it's responsive, looks good on a tablet, on a phone, or on a nice big monitor. And we can then help you draw some targeted customers to that website with our SEO programs. And again, we offer several different models to help you in that. And that's what we're all about here, whether it's Amazon or whether it's web design or SEO services, getting you new targeted customers. We do a lot of SEO work, of course, for ourselves, and we're happy to say that new customers call us every day, and they could be calling you as well. Our clients now range from not just all over the country, but all over the world, and that could be the case for you as well. Last thing I wanted to mention real quick is that we can also help you in the world of web design and SEO with a Google virtual tour, which is a great way for people to preview your business online, and can also be something that helps you get a nice little SEO boost, especially if your competition does not have one. So that is in a nutshell what we do. And again, you can reach us by getting to me at terry@awesomedynamic.com. And we look forward to speaking with you further. Also, the 800 number, 238-1811. So that is our quick little pitch, and we'll talk a little bit more about our website as we close out the show. Right back to you, Paul.
All right, and Ted, if we could get your website back up, tell people how they can get a hold of you so they can get your help on some of these different issues that we've been talking about.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. My website is tedlawfirm.com. My email address, which is really the best way to get a hold of me, is ted@tedlimas.com, or feel free to give me a call, 626-993-7000.
Great, thank you, Ted. And our next topic, and again, before we get into it, I want to make sure that you got your disclaimer in there, Ted. We're going to be talking about those bundled listings with legitimate products and what we're going to do about them. So, Ted, you're going to give us some advice, but you got to tell us the little disclaimer that comes along with it, if you would.
Yeah, so once again, I'm an attorney, and I value my license to practice law. So any statements that I make on this webcast should not be viewed as legal advice. If you have a particular problem and you need to discuss that with an attorney, please seek your own counsel or feel free to give me a call, and let's establish the attorney-client relationship, and then we can discuss it freely at that time. So anything that I say does not establish an attorney-client relationship and should not be relied upon.
All right, great. Thank you, Ted. So let's talk about this this situation. There's so many sellers out there that attain products in different ways and list them on Amazon. And one of the most popular ways to do that is through a bundle. And for those of you that don't know what a bundle is, I can essentially go, let's say, to the store down the road. I could find a distribution channel and acquire a legitimate product. So we're not talking about counterfeit products anymore. We're talking about legitimate products. And maybe that product is well represented on Amazon and has a whole bunch of different reviews. And I don't want to compete against that particular product. So what I decide to do is bundle it with something else. That bundle could be me, let's say, taking a can of pasta sauce and bundling it with a plastic or a sleeve of paper bowls, for example, and I bundle those two items together, wrap them up, and put them on Amazon. And then the manufacturer of either or both of these is upset to see that these two things are bundled together. And what do we do about that? Because I don't want that to represent my brand on Amazon. That's just one example that I had off the top of my head, but I'd like to get your feedback on that if we could, Ted.
Well, sure. Let me begin though by saying that I typically do not get involved directly in these kinds of issues. I find that my clients take care of it themselves because it doesn't necessarily involve a lawyer that you, or an issue that you would address to a lawyer, like a trademark or patent or copyright infringement or some kind of unfair competition. But I think I can shed some light on this topic just because I have discussed it a lot with my clients, and I have sort of learned what they are doing to try to tamp down on this problem. And you know, the issue is that the Amazon rules do allow bundling in most product categories, but there are restrictions. So, for example, in health and beauty, they you know, it's almost impossible to bundle products in the health and beauty category. But in other categories, it is definitely allowable, so long as the products being bundled are similar, complementary, or are related. So for people who are dealing with this problem, you need to really dig into Amazon's rules with respect to product bundling, and figure out whether this is something that's actually allowable under the rules or not allowable under the rules. So what my clients typically do when they have a situation where their product is being bundled with, you know, some cheap doodad that arguably is complementary or related to their product. Again, first step is to simply contact the seller who posted that listing and tell them that you object to your product being bundled with theirs. If you can cite them chapter and verse as to what rule they may be violating, that's even better. And most of my clients report that they have success with that. But there is a group of sellers out there who sort of make it their living to, you know, create their own listings with these bundled products. And believe me, they're familiar with the rules. And you know, they may not take down their listings just based upon a request from another seller. So that's where sometimes I get involved, where my clients will contact me and say, "Hey, Tim, we need to kind of ramp up with this seller and tell them that they're tarnishing our brand with this bundled listing, and that we're not going to allow that." And something else that I see, Paul, that's in a related genre is the multi-pack. So the multi-pack is a situation where somebody has got you know, 3 of your products. Let's say that you've got, you know, a gizmo, and it comes. You can buy it as a single, or you can buy it as a 6-pack, or you can buy it as a 12-pack. And I see some of these people, you know, purchasing the products and creating a 3-pack, or a 9-pack, or a 15-pack, or something like that, and they're now creating their own sort of multi-packs. And Amazon does not allow that. Uh, and so you should be able to report that as a rules violation to Amazon. You can do that through Seller Central, and report that sort of activity as a rules violation. But then, you know, going back to the bundle situation, and so to differentiate, a bundle situation is where they're actually putting together with your product, you know, a different product. A classic situation would be, you know, you're selling cutting boards. Well, they might bundle that with some special kind of knife, or a special sponge that's designed to clean wooden cutting boards, or something like that. And they might put those 2 things together. And again, as I say, in most categories, Amazon does technically allow that if the 2 products are complementary. But you can typically make an argument that the 2 products are not complementary, particularly if you've done a test buy and you find that they're selling some cheap doodad that really does not complement your brand in any way. And if they won't get off your listing based upon a contact through Amazon, then you can go ahead and report that to Amazon and let them ultimately adjudicate the issue. But you want to again, you know, put on your lawyer hat, right, and provide Amazon with evidence that the product that they are bundling with yours is actually diminishing the value of the brand, tarnishing the brand, and should not be allowed.
So, Ted, I know we've talked about in the past, a lot of people try and put on that lawyer hat, and one of the ways you can do that from a legal perspective is doing a cease and desist letter. I know we've talked about that at one point in time, and there's a lot of bad advice in the seller forums on how to do that. Would you mind elaborating on that topic just a little bit for us, pertaining to this specifically?
Yeah, you know, lay people use the phrase cease and desist, and often they just don't know what they're really talking about. They think it's some kind of sort of magic bullet, and I don't I don't think that lay people should be sending out cease and desist letters or emails. They do, and they do it all the time. It's one thing to contact, as a layperson, to contact another seller, which, by the way, Amazon doesn't particularly like anyway. But it's one thing for one seller to contact another seller and just say, hey, you know, this is the situation. I'm so and so. This is my brand. This is the situation, and I'm asking you to please withdraw for the listing, or delete this listing that has this bundling. Don't try to sound like a lawyer. Don't be citing the law or statutes that you know nothing about. And I think it's probably not a good idea to use that sort of lawyer language, that cease and desist language, all the heretofores and the wherewithats that lawyers use. We generally don't talk that way anyway, and I see a lot of cease and desist letters written by lay people that they have no idea what they're talking about. Arguably, they're engaging in the unlawful practice of law by doing that, by mimicking lawyers, or in some cases even pretending to be lawyers. I have seen that, and it's never a good idea. But there's nothing wrong with contacting another seller and you know, using language that a layperson would use, explain to them the situation, and asking them politely but firmly to do as you're requesting.
So, and Ted, so say a seller or a manufacturer is really serious about shutting down these bundles that are packaged with cheap doodad. That's something that they can work with you on. Is that correct?
Yeah, and I'll most likely what I'll do is just instruct them, educate them about how to do it themselves. Because as I say, most of my clients don't come to me and actually hire me to deal with this problem, but they need to be handheld. They need to be shown how it's done, how to provide the evidence to present the best case in their favor to Amazon. And then once I've done that, typically they're able to do it themselves.
Great, and that's something that we do often for our clients, or if somebody wants that hand-holding and wants us to take care of maybe these issues for you, that's exactly what my business does. So great insight there, Ted. Thank you. The other piece here about these bundled listings I wanted to mention is the idea of a manufactured advertised price policy, often referred to as MAP. So this is something where I've heard that you are able to, well, first off, the idea behind it is to quote unquote make the price the same across the board, kind of like when you go into Best Buy or any other place and your Bose speakers and Apple iPhones are the same price no matter where you go. So there is the idea that you can create the same sort of situation on Amazon with some people that you might distribute to. And then the other idea is creating some sort of exclusion in that MAP policy in regard to what channels your product might be sold through if you are using a distributor to get that out into retail outlets that might then appear on Amazon at a later point in time. So Ted, I wanted you to comment on both of those from a legal perspective, because when you and I had a conversation one evening, you had told me that there are some other things to think about when you talk about MAP that could get you into some pretty serious trouble if you don't know what you're doing legally.
Yeah, absolutely. You can easily find yourself violating antitrust laws and price-fixing laws. Those are serious violations. These are not just civil penalties, but we're talking criminal penalties here. So the best advice that I could give your listeners is this is not an area where you should do it yourself. You need the advice of qualified counsel to handle these issues, that is, in drafting a minimum advertised price policy and in enforcing it, because you can run into serious legal trouble, as I say, criminal trouble, not just civil liability, but criminal trouble if it's done wrong. So that said, though, this is something that I do for a lot of my manufacturer clients or distributors who have sometimes been tasked with this job from the manufacturer, and it's especially difficult. Honestly, I mean, it's especially difficult to enforce on Amazon because minimum advertised price policies are not mandatory. They by their own nature they have to be recommendations. They cannot be forced upon a particular seller. So if a seller has an authentic product, the law says that they have a right to sell it on Amazon or any other platform where it's lawful to do so. They have a right to sell it, and they have a right to sell it at any price that they want. They can even sell it at a loss if that's what they feel like doing. And there's nothing that you can do, even if you have a rock-solid MAP policy. There's nothing that you can do to prevent that in every instance. But a MAP policy that is cohesive and that is uniform and that is properly drafted and enforced can be very effective. And you gave the instance of Bose speakers or Apple product. These folks have very tight distribution channels, and the retail sales are very much controlled. And if anybody gets out of line, they find themselves poof out of that channel of distribution very quickly. But nobody can take action against that person. If they decide to sell at a loss, they decide to cut their ties with Bose or Apple or whatever, there's no penalty that you could enforce on them other than, hey, we're just not going to do business with you anymore. So, really, Paul, I mean, I could write a book on minimum advertised pricing strategies and the law that goes along with that. And we don't really have time to explore all of those issues. But for somebody who's thinking about instituting a minimum advertised price policy, or they think that maybe they need some help with enforcement, or they've gotten sideways with their policy and they're finding that lots of folks are undercutting the price and driving it down and injuring the brand, that's something to talk to a qualified lawyer about. Don't try to do it yourself. You'll just get in trouble.
Thank you, Ted. What you said during that piece there brought up another point that I wanted to bring up to close our webinar today, which is really rethinking how you distribute your product as a manufacturer. And a lot of manufacturers have been doing business the way they always have been for years. And I've had a number of clients of mine say, well, this is the way we've always done it, and this is the distributor I use, and they get this out to the retailers, and but then they find all these products keep popping up onto Amazon, and they're using their classic distribution method that they always have been using, and it's hard to explain in some instances that you do have the option of cutting your distribution in certain areas and then reallocating that into Amazon almost exclusively, and make retail direct through Amazon and cut all your other distribution. And that is a very scary thing for a lot of manufacturers to think about from the very beginning. But as they see the lights, and I have found this time and time again, they'll begin to shift and go all in on Amazon and just cut their other distribution methods, or create really tight agreements with their retailers or distributors to make sure that the things aren't popping up on Amazon. One client comes to mind that had that actually decided to stop selling to Walmart because of the way they do business, and decided to sell direct on Amazon because they just made way more money going in that direction. So Ted, I wanted to see if you could comment on some of your experiences with your clients and doing the same sort of thing.
Well, it's a big leap of faith to do that, and I can't say that any of my clients have been willing to, cut off their distribution to brick and mortar stores and go entirely on Amazon. As you know, Paul, there's lots of risks to having all your eggs in one basket, and typically I'm advising, again, this is not advice that applies across the board, but more often than not, I'm advising my clients to try to diversify so that all of their income is not dependent on Amazon. So if that means sales to Walmart or some other big retailer, or making agreements with a distributor or two or three, or making international sales, then that creates, for most anyway, it creates a kind of a healthier ecosystem, so that if one thing goes down, you still have other sources of income and other ways to grow your product.
Now that said, really strengthening those relationships with those distributors and retailers to help mitigate the situation where products are showing up on Amazon. Have you worked with some of your clients on improving that situation, so this way the problems that they're experiencing on Amazon are lessened?
Yeah, absolutely. And it takes some time, and as I say, kind of a unified strategy to get everybody on board, to weed out the bad actors, and to do so in a way that's sensitive to the legal issues that can be involved. You don't want to be indiscriminately sending out emails or even calling people and threatening them with consequences if they're not in compliance with the MAP policy, or if they're selling to people who are unaccountable and will be selling at whatever price they feel like. So it does require a cohesive effort across the board, and I tell my clients when they come to me with these kinds of problems, I tell them, A, it's going to take some time. It's going to take months before you really tame this dragon, and B, it's going to take the dedication, usually of one individual who's responsible for overseeing the map. They're going to really have to attend to the task of calling people and writing emails and really staying on top of it, monitoring Amazon or whatever platforms that they have to be selling on, and dealing with the situation as it arises. It really takes an entire employee really to be dedicated to that particular issue. Otherwise, I find that my clients get sloppy after a while. They get lazy. Oh, I thought so and so was going to do it. No, we were going to divide this task between 2 employees. It's best if you have one employee who's tasked with the job of overseeing the map enforcement. And when they have particularly difficult or tricky situations that they can't handle themselves, that the lawyer get involved, so that we can apply a little extra persuasion, if you will, to make sure that the MAP policy is being enforced across the board. Because there's nothing worse than having 80 or 90% compliance out there, but there's one bad apple or 2 bad apples out there that are just destroying the competition for everyone, and now you can't. Everybody else is saying, well, geez, that so and so continues to sell. How come you're not doing it against? You're not enforcing the policy against them. It becomes a real problem. So in any event, I always urge my clients have one employee that's dedicated to do this, who can be trained, who knows and understands the legal issues that are involved, and can at least spot them when they arise, and involve an attorney when it's necessary.
Great, thank you, Ted. We've come to the end of our time now, and I wanted to thank you again for joining us. If you could tell us again how we can best contact you. Tim will bring your website up on the screen.
Yeah, my website is tedlawfirm.com, and the best way to get a hold of me is to shoot me an email, ted@tedlawfirm.com, or you can click on the Contact Ted link on my website, or please feel free to give me a call, 626-993-7000.